Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is former Florida State quarterback, current ACC Network, Sirius XM analyst, EJ Manuel. EJ, it's been fun getting to go on with you and Hester every Thursday. And I got to say, publicly, you are taking this Florida State start like an absolute champ. Like you really are. You're not bitter. Like you're taking it all in stride, which I give you tremendous credit for, better than certain Danny Cannell. But be honest, privately, you need a hug, man. You just do.
Connor, I do need a hug. I got to get like an air hug right now, bro.
Yep.
Look, man, if you would have told me that Florida State would be 0-3 going into week 4, I probably would have thought you were on drugs. I would have thought you've been drinking. I would have said, hey, look, maybe we need to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, a little AA meeting or something, because I would have thought you were crazy. And so don't get me wrong. Of course, in my job, I know I have to be, what's the word? I try not to be a homer, but of course, I want my alma mater to play well and to do good. I like Coach Norvell. We've developed a friendship. But at the same time, when they're not playing good, I have to be honest, and, of course, I don't like to build my job on tearing kids down because these are still amateur athletes. These are not professionals, right? I played in both. I played in the league and I played in college, and I know how hard it is. But at this point, I just feel like something has to change. And if you have backups who maybe haven't gotten their opportunity to play, and I'm not even just saying the quarterback position, all over the field. It's not just DJU. It's defensive line. It's the corners. It's the linebackers spilling and coming up and making tackles and getting guys on the ground. It's the run game. Roydell Williams gets the first carry in that game against Memphis, pops the ball out, and it's a fumble. Easy field position for Memphis, gives them a lot of confidence in Doak. So, yeah, I do need a hug. I think they need a hug, in fact. And, again, I'm always rooting for them. I want them to do well. But ultimately, we have a job here, and we have to be objective, and we have to be honest and call it how we see it.
I was dead wrong too. For the record, I ranked him 7 preseason top 25. Had him winning the ACC. It was Mike Norvell deserves blind faith. If I had a nickel for every time I said that this offseason, but it wasn't even, oh my God, I think DJ Uiagalelei is going to turn into this Heisman candidate or anything like that. Because he is who he is at this stage of his career. But you just thought the pieces could work. You had an interview with him that ran on College Game Day. You were there in Dublin. You saw all of this play out. To say that it is at this point already with him specifically, I think is stunning even for those who didn't necessarily believe that he would become this star. How stunned are you watching it play out the way that it has in this offense?
Yeah, I'm stunned because I thought this offense would fit him well, and whatever that fit would be. If you watched him at Oregon State where he has some success, they ran the ball, they got under center, they had 2 backs, a fullback and a running back. They ran inside zone, and maybe they do have, I was about to say maybe they don't have running backs that fit Damian Martinez, but they do. Roydell Williams is a guy that can go inside zone between the tackles. Cam Davis, a freshman, he can go in between the tackles. And then you have Lawrence Toafili, who can be that perimeter kind of stretch runner with speed to the sideline. So I thought the run game would be something that would help Florida State. But I don't have the stats in front of me, but they haven't ran the ball. I don't know if they've gotten 100 yards. And if they have, it's not 150 or anything like that. And so that production or lack thereof is certainly going to put more pressure on DJ. And let's be real, he's a 5th-year senior. So at this point, you would expect him to be able to lead the offense with his arm. And it just seems like it never goes right. And even the picks he threw against Memphis, he moves to his right and he throws a deep over route or a post route. I don't know who he was throwing to because it was 2 receivers in the same area. It looked like a punt, Connor. And guy was up under him. The ball pops up in the air 50 yards down the field. And the DB for Memphis catches it literally like it's a punt. And I'm just like, man, we keep shooting ourselves in the foot as an offense. And so I expect him to play much better. I feel like it's a confidence thing with him, and I said that before the season. I told friends, I was like, look, it can go one of 2 ways. It can go the one way where he starts off extremely fast and he has a ton of confidence and that continues to build throughout the season, or it starts the way it is in reality. And now they're just trying to fight and scratch and claw to get a victory. And to be real with you, Connor, I don't know where it's going to come because Cal's a good team. They play them this week. If you were ever going to get a win, I would have thought it would have been at least 1 or 2 of the first 3 that they played, and they didn't get any of those.
Yeah, trust me. After seeing what Cal did at Auburn, I don't think anybody's taking Cal lightly at this point of the season already. Is any of this easier to swallow, knowing that Florida's also done really bad?
A little, yeah. I'll be real. It is a little bit easier to swallow because every program has their ebbs and flows. I can remember when Clemson was not necessarily in this space where they were losing this much, but where they weren't, the dominant, team in the ACC. Like when we played them, they were good. Like had Taj Boyd and Nuke Hopkins and Sammy Watkins. They were really good. They were talented. And it really came down to either us or them. Whoever won that game in the Atlantic in the ACC usually moved on to the ACC championship and had a chance to win the conference. But then you saw their dominance, and now you see them where they're like 9, 10-win team, like trying to also figure it out and scratch and claw, not blowing people out. And so, look, it is what it is. I do think they will win some games. It's just not going to be easy. And the fact is, if they win Georgia Tech, I don't even know if they're in the situation. Truthfully, is that crazy how small the inches are in football? If they find a way to get a stop, or if they don't give up that 12-yard gain after they had a fumble by Georgia Tech, and Haynes King gets back on, he throws like a smoke route, and the receiver got like 12 yards to kick a field goal, maybe they end up winning that game. And then their fortunes are different. Their confidence is different, and we're having a different conversation. So it's about the inches. And also when you lose 10-plus guys to the draft, sometimes this happens too. I think that also needs to be mentioned as well. What, 10 or 11 guys got drafted last season. The star quarterback, Jordan Travis, obviously moved on. And you bring in a DJU who's had an up and down career in college football, and it just to this point hasn't necessarily worked out in Tallahassee.
And 9 of those guys that were drafted were former transfers. I mean, that's the reliance, and it's just a little bit more fickle, even if you've had as much success as Norvell has had in the portal. Sure. Speaking of Florida, your second career road start was against the other guest of today's show, Tim Tebow, and I say second because, with all due respect to Wake Forest, playing in the swamp, a little bit of a different beast, I think you could say, especially when you're, redshirt freshman, you're still trying to figure out who you are. I'm sure you can relate a ton to Nico Lawrence, who's going into his first true road start as a redshirt freshman at Oklahoma. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. What advice would you share with him based on your experience?
Excuse me. The biggest advice for him is to let the game come to you. Now, I think Nico's in a completely different spot than I was years ago. Because one, I mean, this dude he's an amazing player. Like he has, I feel like every single green light within that offense to throw the ball vertically down the field. At that time, I also was a backup. So the offense really wasn't catered to me, not making any, excuses, but that was a situation. Ponder was hurt and I came in. And actually that game was pretty crazy because that was Tim's last game. That was Bobby Bowden's last game against Florida, regular season. And Florida was really, really damn good that year. They had like Joe Hayden and a bunch of other great players on their defense. But for Nico, man, just take what the defense gives you. I think the biggest thing that he'll learn from like another big game against NC State is just don't turn it over. Because if you don't turn it over, you're going to win. Like not only are you potentially going to win big because you have a great team around you, you're going to win a lot of games. And I feel like, as a young quarterback, you have to learn to pick and choose when to take your shots. I know that was something that I always learned, specifically in the NFL, because if you take a shot and let's say you try to throw something in double coverage, ball gets tipped up, it gets picked, or it's incomplete, you want to give that play caller the confidence to know, hey, if I give you a shot, sometimes it's easier to just hit the check down that's 5 yards away and let that guy scatter and get another 8 yards. All right, 13-yard gain. Perfect. We got a first down and we'll get another opportunity to take a shot. So those are just some small things that I would tell him. And also just have fun, man. Be you. At this point, the way he's played to this season, he should have no type of hesitation in what he can do on the football field. He has a rocket launcher on his arm. He has a ton of receivers. He has some really good running backs and an offense that fits him perfectly, where they spread you out and you have pretty much the full field to read every single thing within your progressions.
The story of you getting recruited by Bobby Bowden is incredible. And I know you told it a few years ago with Knowles 24/7. Can you share the story of him coming to Virginia Beach and what a scene it was?
Yeah, it was an awesome scene. So he first came to my high school. And mind you, Nick Saban had been there. Philip Fulmer had been there. Les Miles, Jimbo comes. Jimbo was coming every Tuesday for like 8 weeks straight just to kind of get everybody up out of there. Like, hey, this is my guy. But when Bobby came, it was different. And at this point, my high school was kind of used to these coaches coming through, me getting called out of class, going to my coach's office to meet with them. And I mentioned Nick. Like Nick flew in on a helicopter, landed on the 50. Philip Fulmer from Tennessee, they landed on the 50. So again, they were used to this. But when Bobby Bowden came, it just seemed like maybe it was the teachers that knew more of who he was, and then obviously the student body also kind of figured it out because we're football fans in that area, just, and we like everybody. We don't just like Florida State. We like Miami. We like Michigan, because we're kind of like in that Virginia area where you can either go north or you can go south in your fandom. And so, of course, teachers started asking for autographs, which then led to students stopping asking for autographs. And it just so happened that we were walking through the hallways, I think going toward the gym, and the bell rang. So all the kids come out into the hallways, stop and asking him for autographs. He was very gracious and, was super nice, and took some pictures and stuff. This is like the old cell phones we had, all grainy and whatnot. You remember those days. And the funniest part was when he came to my house in Virginia Beach. And I'm pretty sure either my dad had told our neighbor, Mr. Mark, that Bobby Bowden was coming this particular evening. And Mr. Mark was a huge, funny enough, didn't even know this, a huge FSU fan. And he had like a small, like little small helmet that he wanted him to sign. And I guess Mark had also told some other neighbors within the neighborhood. And so Bobby and Jimbo came over, I guess around 6:30 that evening. And we're sitting down. It was about 7 o'clock getting ready for dinner. And we hit a knock on the door. And no lie, it's like 12 people out front of our house, asking to meet Coach Bowden. And my dad was the one that answered the door. He's like, hey, man, come on. Like, you know what I mean? Like, relax, like, chill. And then Coach Bowden was like, what's going on? And he ends up taking some pictures as well, signed some more autographs. So it was really cool. Another part, my dad had like his chair in the house, right? And as soon as Coach came in, he sat in my dad's chair, which, of course, we didn't mind. Like, it's Bobby Bowden. And I also remember my mom made some lasagna, so that was cool. And we all just sat, and he was super personable, fit right in. And, a lot of times coaches will kind of give you coach speak and just kind of sell you on, hey, man, you come here, we're going to do this and that. He was very honest and like, hey, you come to Florida State, you're going to have a chance to get a great education. You have a chance to get coached by one of the best in Jimbo as a quarterback coach. And you're going to join a brotherhood, a program that is one of the best in college football. He didn't even say anything about his own accolades. And again, just one of those kind of guys with that rare air when they come into your house, man. It was a very momentous night. We still got a picture of that, at our house back home, where me standing there. We got a Christmas tree in the background. It's pretty cool.
It's like God rolling through the door, man.
Literally. That's how I felt. Man. It was very, very cool. And Coach Bowden was also just he's a Christian man as well, which really hit home for my family, because that was how I was raised. And, when I got to Florida State, that stayed the same. It wasn't like you get there to school. Sometimes coaches will tell you stuff throughout recruiting, and then when you get to school, it's different. He always made sure that we were understanding and had the availability to go to a church on Sundays, to have, those 4 or 5 hours off to whatever church it was, to a Baptist church, a Catholic church. He took us to many just to give us a chance to still have that side of our life solid up as well.
Different end of the spectrum, the thrill of being recruited by him and getting to play for him versus I don't even know what the emotion probably was at the time, but do you remember the moment you found out that he was going to be retiring at the end of 2009?
So I knew within recruiting, in fact, that Jimbo was the head coach in waiting. Jimbo made that clear. I don't know if that was a conversation I ever had with Coach Bowden, but I did know that Jimbo eventually would be the head coach. And I didn't know when. I didn't know if it would be my senior year, if it would be my redshirt freshman year, or my redshirt sophomore year, which I forget when he actually took over. I guess it might be my redshirt sophomore year. And so I knew that was also part of my decision. My second choice was actually LSU, and that's when Les Miles was there. It's kind of crazy to think I would have been throwing a Jarvis Landry and Odell and all that kind of stuff. And funny enough, Jarvis is my neighbor now out here in South Florida. So we're boys. But I did know that eventually Jimbo would become the head coach. And that was certainly a part of my decision, because I wanted to go somewhere I knew I would get the tutelage the entire time I was there. So I didn't want to go to FSU if I thought Jimbo might go somewhere else to take a job somewhere else. My junior year, he was like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. And I think he probably told me he would be the head coach in the future just to let me know that he wasn't going somewhere else.
Does that was that, because I don't really feel like it was, it was known that Jimbo is expected to be the guy, but that didn't really feel like it was such public knowledge. There was obviously a plan in place to be able to make that happen, but you never know when, and you can't have that get out. Like, would they say to you like, hey, just like keep this on the DL because we're trying to be able to lock in our foundation here. And we don't want it all of a sudden like out there. And then, oh, Jimbo's, doing this and maybe he's interested in this job or that job. I imagine they were probably like, hey, kind of keep this hush. We have a plan. It'll be okay, but just trust us on this.
Yeah, at that time too, Connor, I was young. So I don't even think I thought anything of it beyond when he first told me about it. And I trusted his word. And I went ahead and signed, and I was excited to go there regardless. I mean, it's Florida State, dude. Like, especially coming from Virginia, being the top player in that state. UVA fans and Virginia Tech fans still give me crap whenever we go there for work trips or when I played them because they wanted me to stay in state. But, those are like the meccas of football, the Michigans, the Florida States, the LSUs, the Alabamas. You go there, it's about as high as it gets. And I don't care if they're good or bad. It's still something to be very proud of, to be a part of, like I said, that brotherhood and that program. So, yeah, sure, it might have been one of those things that we didn't necessarily talk openly about, but it was just kind of an understanding of like, hey, eventually, whenever Coach Bowden does move on or retire or however that process works, because, again, that was way beyond my pay grade back then in college. I was just a broke college kid trying to figure it out on the football field. I knew that Jimbo would be the next man up.
Speaking of Jimbo, you are doing a serious show with Hester and Jimbo during this gap year of sorts for him. I know Jimbo's always kind of been skeptical of media stuff. Like he's not necessarily been someone that wants to get out there and do all the car wash stuff. But obviously doing a show with a couple of his former players like you two had to appeal to him. Did he reach out to you guys? Like how did that process start?
So I'm pretty sure our main producer, Olivia Bronco, she probably reached out to Jimbo. Now, we did have Jimbo, Hester and I would have Jimbo join us on shows last year, and even I think the year before when he was still the head coach at A&M. And, of course, he was comfortable with us because he knows us, man. Like, he helped raise us, really, as his players. Hester played for him at LSU when he was a coordinator. And then I played for him and got recruited by him when he was a coordinator and then the head coach at FSU, like we just talked about. So for him, we're literally just talking ball. And, of course, he knows we're not going to ask him anything that's going to put him on the spot or make him feel uncomfortable about answering a question on a specific coach and all that kind of stuff. Because I get it, man. Like when I went from being a player to also getting into media, I did have to learn, look, I'm not a player anymore. Like you have to be a bit more objective. You have to be honest because sometimes, this, us athletes, will give you just the vanilla answer to kind of just not throw anybody under the bus. We've seen some players do that, and that's just how it is sometimes. And so you have to be very particular in how you answer questions. But Jimbo has done a great job. We've had him on 2 weeks now. I think he enjoys it because it keeps him around the game. And we have meetings before we have that show on Tuesday, and we'll go through what he wants to talk about, and then I'll just pitch in on some thoughts. And I feel like his thought is like his background is he's done it all. He's coached everywhere. He's won championships. He's coached under Nick Saban. Like a lot of the things that Jimbo taught us, I'm pretty sure he got from Nick when he was, an assistant for him. And so it's been great. And I hope our listeners enjoy it because they know Jimbo talks fast and all that kind of stuff. But, he's a savant, man. I haven't really been around anybody like him in a sense where he can remember a play, Connor, from 2009 on week 6. And he'll, I remember X cross shallow, Like he'll just spit it out and he'll remember it. And so, his perspective is really cool to have for our show.
Do you think he gets back into coaching next year?
I don't know if it's next year because I'm pretty sure at this point, let's be real, like financially, he's fine, so
yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's going to take the job that is really perfect for him. He's created that opportunity where he can pick and choose where he wants to go. Funny enough, in the back of my mind, I haven't even talked to Hester about this. Like if, let's say Florida does open up, does Jimbo potentially look into that? I know he coached at FSU. I know he coached at LSU. And if he does get back into coaching, I'm pretty sure he'd probably want to get back into the SEC or maybe even the Big Ten. Don't know. But I haven't asked him that, so I'm not speaking for him. But I would assume whenever he does get back into it, it's going to be because it's like the perfect role in the perfect spot that he wants to go to.
I got to ask, you only spent 1 year with him at FSU, and I'm sure you've gotten this before. You got a Jameis Winston story. What's the best one that you could maybe share on PG-13 airwaves?
Right, as you said, the PG-13 airwaves. So first off, I call him J-Boo. We all call him J-Boo. I don't know if you've heard that nickname of his before, but we call him J-Boo. So when he got to Florida State, he was young, he was immature, like we all are, 17, 18, coming from our high school and getting there. And I remember he told this girl, who I don't even know if Jameis knew that I knew her, but he happened to be out, and it got back to me, and I thought it was really funny. And he was like, hey, he was introducing himself to the girl. And so he was like, hey, I'm Jameis. How are you? What's your name? Da, da, da. She's like, oh. And he was like, yeah, I'm the new quarterback. I'm about to come in and take EJ Manuel's spot. Da, 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 da. And so she was like, oh, really? Okay, cool. Good luck with that. And so it got back to me, but it was honestly one of those things. Jameis is like a brother to me, man. Like back then I didn't even take it serious, whatever. Like we competed. I continued to start. He was a red shirt that year. The plan worked out perfect for him. Because even that team in 2012, we had a championship caliber team. And a lot of those kids or guys, were like sophomores on the offensive line. They were younger. And then when Jameis came in as that redshirt freshman, they were juniors. And it was a lot of draft picks. Cam Irving, Josue Matias, Brian Stork was our center, Trey Jackson, Bobby Hart. All these guys, all 5 of them played in the league. And so they were juniors when Jameis came in. But that's a funny story. And then even back when he was a redshirt, Jameis, we would have to like get him from he'd be over at the water bottle station playing around, just cracking jokes. He literally is the same persona that he has now. He's always been that way. And so he loves the game. He takes it extremely serious. And I've even told Jameis this as well. Like one of the things I've always admired about him is his short-term memory. He can throw two picks in the first half and then he'll throw four touchdowns in the second half and win the game. And that's literally playing quarterback. You have to have short-term memory. And so I've always appreciated that about him. I wish I had more of that from him when I was a player myself. And so those are like the PG-13 stories, of course. But we've had some great, great memories. And seriously, I'm so proud of him. And not even just the football stuff he's achieved, playing in the league a long time. The fact that he's a family man now, he has kids, he has a wife. He's doing really, really well. And his media career is going to be bananas whenever he is finished playing. He's going to be great.
His wife, not the girl that he told he was going to take your job.
Correct. Not that girl. Neither of us married that girl. She's a friend. It's all good. And she actually was a friend back then too. So yeah, it's all good. Not that girl.
I'd like to write a book about this subject one day. And it's, there's a lot of different interpretations of it, but it's the moment that quarterbacks in the NFL realize that they're not going to have the career that they hoped for, either because it's just not there and they realize like, I can't process on this level. I don't have physical ability, whatever it is, or maybe the opportunity isn't going to be there and they realize they're never going to get it. You're 5 weeks older than me. So for a long time, I kind of still looked at you as like, yeah, EJ's young. Like he's going to find the right spot. He's going to make it work.
Right.
But answer this however you want. Like what was that moment for you in the NFL?
The moment really was for me when I signed with Kansas City. Even before that. So I'll give you the whole track. I did 4 years in Buffalo, did another year in Oakland, and then I signed with Oakland for my 6th season. Going through training camp, Derek Carr was going to be the starter again. John Gruden came in as the head coach. And so I was battling with Connor Cook from Michigan State for that backup job pretty much. And you can look this up after, man. We played throughout the preseason. I got the fourth preseason game to start against Seattle. Had an amazing game. And so I thought that was kind of the nail in the coffin to make the team. And I remember we got the 2 days off after the game. And then I went to LA to check on like an apartment I had just bought because I was renovating it so I could live in it during the off season after that year. And I get a call from the GM and they're like, hey, are you in town? I was like, yeah, no, I'll be back, later tonight. It was like, hey, can you come in? Because we need to have a meeting. Connor, at that point, I'm thinking, I'm about to get a restructured contract. I'm about to get like a 2-year deal, 2 years, $10 million or something as the backup. Because that's kind of like the number for a backup, right? And so I come back and before I even get on the plane, my agent calls me, Todd France. He's like, hey, you talked to the GM? I was like, yeah, they want me to come back. And he's like, did they tell you they were going to let you go? And I was like, what, really? Like, it was the first time I had ever been cut in anything, specifically also in the league. And I had just played what I thought was one of my better games in my career. But preseason or not, it didn't matter. Like I felt like I played well enough to make that team. They ended up cutting me for AJ McCarron, who basically got beat out by Josh Allen out at in Buffalo. And so I go back to LA. I'm training. I'm waiting. And I even remember John Gruden never really gave me an explanation as to why he let me go. Like, I was just kind of like, okay, I had a good preseason. I'm going to get picked up probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks when somebody goes down. During that season, I got 3 workouts. Everybody kept guys that they already had on the roster, which is kind of normal. If they have like a practice squad guy, they'll just bring him up instead of bringing in guys that don't know the offense, all that kind of stuff. Because the onboarding takes like 2 or 3 weeks instead of guys who have been there. And so I'm training. I end up tearing my meniscus for the 3rd time because I had torn my meniscus twice my rookie year, once in the second week of the preseason my rookie year, and then again in like week 15 of my rookie year. Got surgery that summer, or that offseason, and then tore it again while I was waiting to get signed. And so got surgery, and then I signed with Kansas City in February of 2019. And actually, this was like the first Super Bowl team that they had later on that year. And so when I was there, my knee was still bothering me. It didn't recover like I thought it would. And to be real, I was thinking like, yo, if Pat goes down, if I'm the backup, am I healthy enough to even lead this team that's supposed to win a Super Bowl? And I was very honest with myself. And I also had the opportunity to join ACC Network at the time too. So if I didn't have a TV opportunity, I would have kept playing. I would have been like, hey, I'm going to just suck it up and figure it out, take some medicine and just, grit my teeth and get through this pain. But when I knew I had a TV opportunity and a media opportunity, which is what I got my degree in at FSU, I kind of saw it was like, maybe this is a sign for me to move on. And so to answer the question, I think it was just another opportunity kind of presented itself that I was okay with. And I just took that leap of faith to see if I liked it. And the funny part is Kansas City actually called me back. So I retired in like June of 19. They called me back in August because Chad Henne had broke his ankle. And they were like, hey, come back. You can be the backup. We'll guarantee you your money. And that was the other part. I didn't have guaranteed money in that deal. Chad did. So I assumed if I go through preseason, they're going to keep Chad over me because they owe him $6 million. They don't owe me anything, right? And I just went through that with the Raiders the year before. And so I didn't want to be without a job and basically lose that opportunity at ACC Network. So I had to make the decision when I did to leave. And literally, I told Coach Reed, went to his office. I said, hey, Coach, I'm going to move on and go do TV. He was like, you got an interview? I was like, no, I'm going to take another job. And he was like, what, really? Like, you sure? And I said, yeah, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm going to go ahead and move on. So looking back, I think I had real regret probably when I was sitting there watching the Super Bowl that year. I remember I was in Miami watching it with friends, and I just like, yo, like, this is crazy. Like, I would have probably still been playing, truthfully, and potentially still for them because KC keeps their backups, and Chad played as a backup to Pat for like the first 6 years of his career. And, Andy Reid's awesome, like great front office. Travis Kelce's a friend of mine. We trained together for the draft. So I've known him for a long time. But I also believe God doesn't make mistakes, and I enjoy what I do now. So to answer your question, I guess that moment was just when I got cut by Oakland because I was like, man, okay, not only did I not get the chance to really start again when I left Buffalo, because that was another story. Like my second year in the league, I get benched. Similar to how Bryce Young kind of is in that position. But we were 2-2. We lose to Houston that week. And internally, it was told to me by the head coach that, hey, we want you to take a step back so you can learn from a veteran, which is usually normal early in the career. But that wasn't presented to the media. It was just more or less like, hey, we're switching quarterbacks. We're going with Kyle Orton, not EJ. So, of course, EJ got benched, right? And then that narrative permeates throughout my career pretty much. And then also even internally, my confidence took a hit as well. And it definitely affected me. So that's why I can understand and I can relate to a Bryce Young. I can relate to a DJ Uiagalelei because I know how hard it is when your confidence does start to get hit, start to get punched a little bit. And you of course, need those opportunities to get it back, but sometimes you don't get them.
It's a great answer. It's a really, really good answer. You have such great perspective. And speaking of your gig with ACC Network, which, by the way, you're crushing. You've got a long, long career ahead of you. I mean, you just tell. It's very, very evident. I know you got to run. You got production meetings coming up.
Yeah, all good.
But I want to get you out of here with some rapid fire. Just 5 questions. First thing that comes to mind. Does that work?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Okay, first one. What's the play that you think about when you close your eyes and daydream about your career?
Ooh, trips right, 35 pin Indy.
That's any specific instance of that?
Yeah. So, all right, trips right. We got 3 guys to my right. The tight end's actually going to stay in and block. I'm giving a fake zone to the left. I'm peeling around. I'm looking at safety. Outside, I have a post, and then I have what we call like a in and out. So basically, the slot receiver is going to run like a 10-yard in and then peel back out, almost like an over or a corner route. And so it's like a hollow read. Pretty much, we get quarters. I'm tossing the post. If it's cover 2 or if it's anything else, I'm probably banging the out. And then I also have a flat out in the right side because it's like a chip flat by the tight end.
Dang, you're really smart. that was a great breakdown. That was really good. Yeah. What's the toughest place to play at least in terms of your college experience?
Ooh, I got to say Clemson, Death Valley was pretty tough. Death Valley.
Start your college career over, but Florida State doesn't exist. Where are you going and why is it LSU?
Yeah, I'm going to LSU because that was my second choice, and they showed me a ton of love when I was getting recruited. And I always feel like they have great receivers to throw to for quarterbacks.
You're a fellow Florida native, Florida resident, I should say.
Sure.
You spent enough time here to be able to answer the question, is Florida the South?
South Florida is not the South. South Florida is its own Caribbean animal kind of way. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. But yeah, technically the state of Florida is the South, but South Florida is its own entity.
Central Florida as well, kind of its own.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Yeah. But like Tallahassee and up Jacksonville, that's the South. That's like South Georgia.
Yeah, you got to go north to get south. That's
correct.
That's the way to describe it. All right, last one. If people see you in public, what can they do that isn't just asking you if you need a hug for your nose?
They can just say "Go Noles." I'll appreciate that. And then sometimes that seems like they're trying to be funny as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it. Because look, I live in South Florida, and Miami's very good. So my neighbor over here, I know I mentioned Jarvis; he's an LSU guy, but like everybody's fans now because they're really good. So I give them that. But then I also remind them they did not beat me when I was a starter at Florida State. So it is what it is. They can't say much to me. But I guess I would say just say "Go Noles," and I'll appreciate that.
There you go. All right. Yeah. Don't ask EJ if he needs a hug. He's good.
Yeah, I'll be. Yeah, my wife is here. I'll get a hug from her. I'll be all right.
Exactly. EJ, really appreciate this, man. Looking forward to chat with you on off campus, and we'll do this again real soon.
Sounds good, bro. Appreciate you, Colin. Thanks, man.